Alright everyone, this is gonna probably be the last video I do for tonight, because I need to go to bed. A long day, a long week. So, doing some testing, which you probably just saw part of what we did before. I think we figured out what the kind of generalist carrack loadout of vehicles could be, as long as there isn't any penalties to having multiple vehicles in some of these places. I think it'll be very good for the end of the game, or whenever the game launches. That being said, depends on what type of player you are. So, if you're just a exploration person and you want to use the carrack as like a safe place where you can like fly back to and land and travel really far away from it and just use it as kind of a house, then the Pisces still works. The Pisces is fine, not a big deal. All right, if you want the quantum drive and you like the Pisces, perfectly fine. Now, for the optimal carrack loadout, since the carrack is basically a mobile base, and specifically in my fleet, we're going for like marine expeditionary units and stuff. We want to use basically more utility ships than just general, like, than having one singular ship like the Pisces. And it came about from me and an org mate discussing the Argo cargos, as I kind of liked the Argo cargos for a long time, and but then I forgot about it, and I ended up testing it because I knew you could get two Argo cargos in the top bay, and I knew you could get two in the vehicle bay. So in total, you can get five Argo cargos on the carrack as is. All right, but you can get three of them in that top area. However, this is basically what the loadout's going to be. You get two Argo cargos in the top of the carrack. That gives you four, I believe, four SCU. Yeah, so you get four SCU of cargo storage, potentially, although I believe it's more because the Argo cargo has a big area. It's just that the Argo cargo puts the box in the middle of the pod, and I think there's a reason for that. And it's because my org mate was telling me that the Argo is basically the Huey helicopter from Vietnam, and that makes sense to me now. That the box would get stored in the center of the ship instead of the side, because it means that you can shoot and move on the sides of the ship while having cargo in the middle. Now, two of these gives you redundancy when it comes to transportation, and also two of them gives you the same amount of cargo storage potential, if not more, than the Pisces. Then the Pisces armaments are fine. There's the size ones and a couple of missiles. That's okay, but it's not going to be good enough to handle fighters or, ground vehicles, probably at anything relevant at all. And the Pisces is very fast, which is good. But, in the future, you're going to have to hover. Who knows how long the Pisces is going to be able to hover. You have to aim down to try to hit things. It's not the best fighter. It's pretty much just an exploration craft that's good at dealing with, people and animals, you know, people without anti-air guns. So the Argo cargo, how I'm seeing this now is that basically it's a very kind of slow, short range transport, short to medium range transport. It is ridiculously slow unless you're in space, but I think that's kind of the point, is that this ship essentially you want to park sort of semi close to where you're going, but you drop these off to make the final approach. And in that sense, it's kind of better than the Pisces in some degree, but it can't defend itself, so it needs escorts. So the escorts are going to be the Furies, So you're going to have two transport helicopters and two Furies. Furies have bigger guns than the Pisces, so you're looking at what, eight size threes and eight size two missiles with two Furies, which is way more firepower than a Pisces ever had. And it allows you to have basically two escort light attack helicopters for your Argo cargos, which is basically the same thing that happens with the Hueys. I believe they're escorted with, um, small light attack helicopters. Fury fits that bill pretty well. It's a sleek, very small, compact. You can fit a lot of them in an area. Apparently, the Marine Expeditionary units, they use like 12 to 15 sort of utility transport helicopters, and then they have, I don't know, like six or so of the attack support light light attack helicopters. So it makes sense to me. With our fleet, we'll have two carracks, so we'll have four MPUVs and we'll have four um, Furies, and then essentially we'll have to have, you know, a few more stockpiled somewhere as backups. And I'm starting to think now that we'll put them on the Polaris whenever it comes out. You put another however many Argo MPUVs on the Polaris, a few more Furies on the Polaris, maybe a couple of Pisces on the Polaris, and your Pisces will end up being like your emergency shuttlecraft, while the MPUVs are more of your organized attack. Now, why is how are we going to use the MPUV as a cargo, like as a Huey helicopter? Well, essentially, you can put a ton more people on this ship than you can with the dropship version. The dropship version has like 8 drop seats, which is fine, but my recollection, like my thinking on this right now, is that basically the Argo cargo can hold more men, and since it doesn't travel very fast, you don't really throw people around. We tested it the other day. It goes like 100 and something, kilometers an hour or something. Um, he did turns, he hit the afterburner, all that. I fell down like once. Crouched kind of solved some of that. I might have fell down once when he hit the brakes or something. Wasn't that big of a deal. So this is an extremely, steady, smooth ride in the back in the Argo Cargo. So it gives you more flexibility. You could definitely hold a lot more people in it. As long as you have the air capacity to keep them alive in the back, you should be good. And then it has two side doors. So if we come down here and we look, it has two side doors on either side and that same ramp section here, which this is why we liked this ship for the front of the carrack, sliding it in that vehicle bay because it's flat on the bottom. But in this sense, the step is actually like a Huey helicopter, and then this would be your side door that people jump in and out of. So the one bonus that you would have is that you have a back door that everyone can run out the back with while having these two side doors open. But if you have a box that's stored in the center of the Argo cargo, you could fill that full of ammunition and then have two guys in the doors with machine guns laying down small arms fire on the ground while your guys unload, which is something that you can't do with the Pisces, because if you try to land the Pisces in a combat zone, all of your guns are forward facing and you have no way to protect anyone coming out, the back of the Pisces. So I think this is really coming in. And as a combination, when you really consider having one Pisces fly down and land, not so great. But if you have two MPUVs with four LMG like gunners in the doors, that's a good amount of firepower, good amount of suppression, and it's also in the airs. And then you have two Furies, which are capable of fending off fighters, fighting light vehicles, stuff like that. and they have bigger, better missiles than the Pisces. You can start to see the utility that you have with this, you know. And now for the bottom section of the ship, what we're considering is that the vehicle bay on the carrack, there's a few options, but basically what I think is going to be the best option for the vehicle bay right now is you're going to want probably either a medical Ursa or a regular Ursa, and then you'd probably want a or like a rock DS or something if you wanted to mine. But I think a medical Ursa or a rock Ursa or a regular Ursa would be good. Now, if you didn't do that, the best option I think would be getting the medium base building vehicle that they showed at CitizenCon. They said it was about going to be about the size of a Cyclone, which granted that means that you could have two medium base building vehicles and one Carrack, which would be very nice, but I don't know if you necessarily need to. And then potentially you could have two Dragonflies in a similar space. So the Dragonfly shows that it's smaller than the Cyclone, and the width is like 2.5 with a length of 7. Where this is showing a length of 6 and a width of 8.75. So this is basically showing that it's a little bit shorter. It's like 1 meter shorter, 2 meters. And then lengthwise here, it is like under half the length of a Cyclone. So if we're able to do some testing at some point, which I might do when I get back online, theoretically you could at least get two of these Cyclones in there. I mean, length of 2.5 versus 6 will give you a decent amount of space. Why I think this is beneficial though is that the Dragonfly technically is supposed to have storage capacity. It has guns on it. It can carry a passenger, and it can carry a cargo box potentially in the future. Which means if you're trying to transport cargo on a planet's surface, granted that vehicle that they showcase can carry 4 SU at a time, but if you have multiple Dragonflies, you can sit there and chain um, cargo to an area. And if you decided that you didn't want an Ursa rover, then you could potentially put 6 Dragonflies in there, which would give you a lot of ability to move cargo around, move people around, explore and do a bunch of other things in ground combat. But I think a medical Ursa could potentially be good because you could drop a medical Ursa off, your base building vehicle off, and 2 Dragonflies off, which gives you a decent amount of firepower to deal with like ground threats. You're still going to be able to move cargo with the Dragonflies whenever they let you put the 1 SCU boxes on the back. You can still move your crew around because you're going to have 4 seats in those vehicles, and you'll have a backup vehicle for your crew in the medical Ursa. So if you really wanted to get sophisticated with it, you'd have 2 guys in the medical Ursa and 2 guys on the Dragonflies, which would give you 2 SCU of cargo carrying capacity, which is more than a regular Ursa would be, and you'd have more firepower and you'd have medical in your Ursa that can potentially take care of all 4 of you. And essentially, when you're base building, it just means that you're going to be able to use the Ursa to keep yourself healthy, but it isn't going to do anything major if you get seriously injured besides stabilize you, and enough time for the carrack to come and swoop you up probably would I be the ideal situation, um, or some other ship. And that's what I'm thinking the base vehicle loadout should be, because with two carracks, you'd basically have two ground building vehicles, base building vehicles you could separate, two medical ursas that you could drop off and separate, and then the four dragonflies that you could drop off and separate. And then if you decided not to use a medical ursa, you could use two base building vehicles and two dragonflies, and then drop your cargo off on the outside of the carrack, and then just let the dragonflies bring it to wherever the other thing goes. Or you could bring six dragonflies and have a whole bunch of those as well. But I don't think it's too bad. And then loadout wise on the carrack, because I've been thinking about this a little bit, is I've got to thinking basically like you have decent angles when it comes to these side turrets, and you have decent angles when it comes to the bottom turret. Um, the side turrets can deal with like air targets, but it can't shoot everywhere. And then the bottom turret and the side turrets are good at shooting at the ground when you're flying around. But the top turret might be a little bit more specialized. And since they're not giving us the size 5 turrets back, apparently, and I think that the carrot should have a top size 5 turret for defense. But since they're not doing that, I'm thinking about replacing the top turret weapons on the carrot with like the size 4 ballistic cannons, something with a little bit more bump. So if you have a Corsair or something come at you while you're on the ground, you can remote control this from the front and get direct ballistic weapons on immediately. Um, it wouldn't be something that you'd want to use all the time, but it would be that weapon that someone could use to defend the ship while no one else is around, which I think would be ideal. As for the other guns, like in combat, it just means that you need three turret gunners instead of four. Does reduce your, combat damage a little bit, but being able to use the ballistics in combat when you need would also be kind of nice. And since that one seat is pretty much only useful for a turret gunner, it frees up one crew member that you could use for other things. So I think I might test it out with the ballistics. I mean, you could still turn this thing sideways and probably shoot down at ground targets with this. Um, and I know that this top turret still has a good angle. Um, because if you park at a side angle, this can shoot directly down like this. So you can get three turrets on target on a ground target. But it's just an idea that I might try, like running the ship with ballistics, especially on the top turret, just for like a little bit of defense. But I'm gonna head to bed, so y'all guys have a good one.